available. Now, first and foremost, compression is the first tool that we'll look at. And we've seen compression before, but mastering compression is a little different. For starters, it has to be stereo, right? We're dealing with a stereo file. It's quite often multi-band in nature as well. In other words, instead of just a single compressor squashing the entire signal down, a multi-band compressor has different compression settings for each of those bands of frequencies within your mix. Perhaps maybe it's really crushing the low end frequencies, maybe squeezing the mids and then barely touching the highs. That gives us a whole lot more control than just a single dumb compressor. Then we can use an EQ, which can then cut or boost multiple bands of your mix and kind of even out that sonic spectrum. Now, it's always advisable to use EQ after compression, as compression tends to boost certain frequencies, and setting EQ after it allows you to kind of make adjustments for that coloration that the compressor might have added. We can then tweak the stereo spread of the final mix, usually in the low end and high end independently. A good rule of thumb is to narrow the low end down into a kind of a mono source and then spread out the highs a little bit across the speakers. We can then add a final limiter to make sure we don't go into the red. You can see why we'd want to put that guy at the end, right? At the end of the chain. Now, some of you might have some mastering effects, like in some of the BR recorders, some of the latest Tascam recorders have mastering effects built in. If so, you'll probably see a single mastering effect chain made up of individual mastering effects like what we just discussed. More often than not, you can just scroll through preset chains of these effects and listen to which one gives you kind of the best result. You can then go ahead and tweak those individual effects to some degree on these hardware multitracks, and that may give you the results that you want. But if there's any time to lean on your computer, then now would be that time. And here's why. While jumping from a hardware multitrack to a software multitrack is a bit of a challenge, you need to make sure, that you have the right interfaces and need to work on a right hard drive speed, latency issues to be able to record and play back in real time. The process of mastering is on a computer only requires a pretty basic computer, and you simply get your files in and out via a little USB thumb drive or something like that. You'll need to use some nice mastering software, but a lot of these packages come with free trials, so you can easily download them and try them out. Now, I actually have some suggestions, and here are some of my favorites. Actually, if you've already used a software like Pro Tools, Cubase, or Reason Record, they have some sort of mastering software built right in. Now, if you want to go the software route, here are two of my favorites.
Ozone 4 comes with a new, redesigned preset manager containing 140 presets designed by professionals, giving you a great starting point for your mix or master. The preset manager can now also be undocked and viewed as a separate, resizable floating window, making it easier to see how presets affect Ozone's settings. Inside of Ozone 4's preset manager are new macro presets. Macro presets help you to take Ozone 4's presets one step further by customizing them to fit the particular character of the music you are working with. Each of these macro presets contains one or more macro faders, which are directly linked to control parameters inside one or more of Ozone's mastering modules. Macro faders let you control key Ozone parameters in real time directly from the preset manager. While each macro preset comes with many pre-designed macro faders right out of the box, by clicking on the Advanced tab, you can edit the current settings or create your own custom configurations. To add your own macro fader to a preset, simply click on the Add Macro Fader button. Give your macro fader a name, and use the parameter menu to define what Ozone 4 parameters you wish to control. You can also use the start, end, and scale values to define the range and behavior of that parameter with respect to your macro fader. Other new features include a new Compare function, allowing you to easily do A/B comparisons of different settings. The use of folders is now fully supported, letting you categorize your presets. You can drag, drop, and rearrange presets, create new folders, and mix and match settings from different presets, all from within the preset manager, making Ozone 4 the fastest way to get a great sounding master.
These guys are a bit of an investment, around 2 to 3, maybe even 500, but here's where actually you can make some of that money back. Imagine that you sprung the $200 or $300 for these guys and bought one of these mastering suites, and you got so good at it that you could master with the pros, okay? Guess what? Every home recording musician in the world who is uneasy with mastering, doesn't even know what it is now your potential customer. What if you could put up a small website and started hanging around some of the forums and charged maybe 30 to 50 bucks a song to master their songs? They could easily transfer their tunes via SoundCloud, and you could start gathering your presets for different types of genres and make some decent side cash. Anyway, downloading a few trials and getting some results is really a great way to get started in mastering. Here are some of my favorite tips and tricks in terms of mastering. Number one is, how is the original mix down? If you have a bunch of problems on your final mix, then sometimes the best thing to do is just go back and fix that mix. If your guitar is too loud in the mix, then mastering EQ is probably not going to be able to fix that without screwing up a lot of other things that are in that same sonic space. Sometimes it's just better to go back to the drawing board and mix your song down again. Also, if you're making a lot of EQ changes in the mastering EQs, like 5 dB or more, it's probably a warning signal that you need to probably go back and remix your song again. Keep in mind that we can actually use multiband compression as kind of a form of EQ in terms of boosting one part of your spectrum over the others. Now, if you find that compression is kind of taking the life out of your mix, then perhaps try slowing down the attack and release, so some of those transients which give your song life are able to get through before they get squashed out. And if you're recording dance tracks, you may want to play with the release until it syncs up with the BPM of your song to get that popular kind of just pumping sound you hear at the club, so it kind of pumps with quarter notes. Now, a rule of thumb in mastering EQ is to keep your cuts narrow and your boosts wide. The cuts are corrective of problems, and your boosts are to kind of compensate wider over bands, so you can keep them a little bit wider. I normally give a slight boost around 8 to 10K to compensate for the slight kind of dulling that a compressor can introduce, and then add a little air at around 14K on up. Now, a high-pass filter positioned around 30 Hertz will pull out any subsonic stuff that's just kind of eating up the power, where there's really nothing of value down there. Don't be afraid of using the presets as well that come with your mastering effects. They've been made by some very smart people who know a lot about this subject, a lot smarter than I am. While you may not use them verbatim, they're normally a good starting point and a way to kind of reverse engineer a sound. Find one you like and kind of pull it apart and see how they achieve that sound. And finally, use the best monitors that you can afford. It's an exercise in futility to make all of these sonic adjustments when the very system you're using on is sonically flawed.